I'm going to introduce the first presenters. So I would like to invite Mr. Edmen and Miss Siti with the English Exam Skills Program from the Dyslexia Association of Singapore to present their research on exploring classroom practices of the English Exam Skills Program for Singaporean primary school children. Just a little bit about them. Mr. Edmen is a lead educational therapist and heads the English Exam Skills team as the program manager in developing and evaluating the English Exam Skills curriculum. He holds a Masters of Arts in Applied Linguistics with NIE, National Institute of Education. He has published his work in the Asia Pacific Journal of Developmental Differences and has also presented at the International Dyslexia Association Conference in 2015. Ms. Siti is a senior educational therapist who is a core member in the Exam Skills curriculum and resource development. Together, they have a combined experience of about 12 years supporting students with dyslexia and about 8 years supporting students with exam skills. So, can you please come up? I'd like to invite them. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll just start with our presentation. So we were already introduced, so I will not talk about this. So we are both from the Exam Skills Program. We are both teachers and curriculum developers of the English Exam Skills Program. Okay, before I actually start with my presentation, I would like to actually explain some key terms for the sake of people who may not understand these terms. Okay, so the PSLE is actually the Primary School Leaving Examinations. It's actually a very high stakes examination in Singapore, where students at the end of the primary school education will have to go for this exam, and it is an important exam for the students as well as the teachers and parents, because this exam would determine the secondary schools that these students will go into. Okay, another key term would be the EESP, which actually is the short form of our program, which is the English Exam Skills Program, and the OG principles, which stand for the Orton Gillingham principles, which is actually the model around our curriculum that we developed as well as our teaching practices. Okay, so these are just some key terms. We started off the English Exam Skills Program back in about 2013. When we started teaching, we realized a lot of our students have very similar difficulties. They have difficulties with components in the English exam paper such as grammar, editing, synthesis and transformation, and comprehension. And a lot of these difficulties are there because of dyslexia. So because dyslexia is a difficulty in language learning and cognition, so these components are actually a problem to the students. All right. So with that in mind, we actually developed a curriculum for the students in a very OG-based manner. These are some examples of the OG principles. So an example of how our curriculum is very OG-based would be how we design our curriculum in a very structured, very sequential, very step-by-step manner. All right. So just a very general understanding of how we design the curriculum. We have moved quite a bit since we started our program back in 2013. We have moved from developing our program, increasing our content in the curriculum, as well as consistently evaluating our program. And last year we did a study, and we actually presented the study in last year's Unite conference. And it's also published in a paper based on students in 2014. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And this particular session is actually about the research that we are currently doing on classroom practices. Okay, that's for this one. So just a bit of background literature, or some, just very generally, what we have read are in relation to how, this is some background literature. Okay, so the first study is actually on the effectiveness of the OG approach, which is actually done by some of our own staff. So this study actually showed that there are positive reading and spelling gains for learners with dyslexia after intervention. So based on this, we are trying to see if this effectiveness is also going to work with teaching exam skills. Okay, the other two studies is on how consistency is very important in teaching for learners to pick up what they need to learn. So these are two examples: consistency, consistent pedagogical practices. So the teachers should be very consistent in teaching the students. All right. So this is some background literature. We also have the paper that we did last year. So this was a paper that analyzed our own students, the exam skill students, We analyzed the needs of our students using a curriculum development cycle, and over the series of the whole year, we did pre and post tests for students in terms 1 to 4, ranging from 26 to 46 students. And throughout the entire year, we saw that the students have improved significantly based on the pre and post test scores. Okay, but this study, because at this stage, it was the very first study that we conducted, is a very simple study. It's a pre-experimental design. It's it's insufficient. So we would like to do this current study that I'm presenting to you now, because of the limitations in the previous study, which is a lack of a control group. We only had the students that came into our program did a pre and post test. We didn't have anything to compare them with. We also knew that they improved in their test scores, but we had no idea why they have been improving. So we would like to find out more about that. Okay? So with that in mind, this is the methodology of our current study. We have a control group this time, and we have 20 hours of intervention. We have both an experimental group and a control group. And all of these students, they are diagnosed with dyslexia, and they are all enrolled in our main literacy program. And they have been progressing in their literacy skills, but now we are looking at how they can progress with exam skills after joining the exam skills program. Out of the 44 students in the control group, we picked 5 of them. 5 of them are actually in 2 separate classes, and these students were part of the qualitative study. So they were in classes, and the classes were video recorded, and everything that's happening in the classroom, the conversations, they were transcribed and analyzed. Of course, these were with the parents' consent. Okay, so as a whole, we have 2 bits of data that we collected from this study. We have pre and post test scores. We also have classroom observations. So that's our data. Okay. So this is the quantitative results, the pre and post test scores. There are lots of bar graphs here because every single pair of bar graphs represent an individual student. So from the graph in general, we can see that the orange is mostly always a lot higher than the blue, which is to show that the scores of the post-test is a lot better than pre-test. Okay, and of course, we did our stats as well. It's significantly improved. This is the graphs for the control group. As you can see, the blue and the orange are very similar. So some students even score poorer in the post-test. So there's no significant difference in the control group. This is just a summary of the results of the pre and post-test. The blue representing the experimental group, the orange representing the control group. So similarly, experimental group, a significant difference, control group, no significant difference. All right, so now I'll hand the time to Siti, who will talk to you more about the qualitative aspect of our study.
Thank you. Thank you, Edmen. Okay, I'll talk about the classroom observations of reading comprehension lessons that we have conducted over 4 weeks. Okay, we have actually noted some interesting patterns and practices of the teacher, which we have categorized in 2 broad categories. One is the general observations and the other specific observations. Okay, under general observations, there are 3 aspects of the teacher's practice that stood out. Okay, I'll talk about RIM-AIR first. Okay, what is RIM-AIR? RIM-AIR is basically an acronym that we designed to represent the teaching structure in the English exam skills class. As you can see, it is highly structured. A typical lesson begins with a review of a previously learned concept, which actually promotes retention and retrieval. And then the teacher will then introduce the new concept and scaffolds the student into understanding the concept by modeling the application of the concept in questions. Okay, then subsequently, the teacher then encourages the student to apply the concept with her guidance before actually releasing her guidance gradually to enable the students to apply independently. Then the lesson ends with a recap of the concept taught, where the students are reminded again of what has been taught in that particular lesson. Okay, this is a sample of the interaction between the teacher and the students in the recap component, which is the last section of the lesson structure. As you can see, okay, the red words represent the words of the student. The green words are the words of the teacher. because of the teacher's consistency in lesson delivery and abiding by the structure, the student actually could anticipate what the teacher would ask him. All right. So because it is expected of the student at the end of the lesson, so the student will be more motivated to try to remember what has been taught. Okay. All right. The next aspect of her teaching practice, which actually stands out, is her efforts at employing the VAKT structure. Okay, the VAKT approach. VAKT approach is actually a short abbreviation for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile. All right. So basically, what she has used is physical demonstration, gestures, and drawings, and the use of materials to actually explain and enable students to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words that they come across in the process of reading a text. All right. Okay, actually, when she employs the VAKT approach, she is actually appealing to the different modalities of learning that the student has. So in so doing, this actually aligns with the simultaneously multisensory aspect of the OG principles. The unfamiliar word is represented in the underlined word, the black underlined word, and then the teacher's actions are represented by the green words. The red words are actually the students' guesses. This is another example. If you just read through, just look at the colors, all right? You notice that at no point in time did the teacher actually just give away the answers to the students, right? She persistently just uses her VAKT approach to and give them time to actually arrive at more accurate guesses. Okay. All right. The last aspect of the general observations that we notice is, which aligns with the OG principle of being emotionally sound, is her attempts at giving step-by-step guidance and providing materials that suits the students' needs and abilities. On top of that, one consistent practice of hers is to frequently provide positive feedback and also praises whenever students manage to arrive at accurate answers. All right, maybe just show you an example.
What's a clock? Pencil. Okay, very good guess. Excellent guess, but I'll show you what's a clock, okay?
So the red words here actually demonstrate to you the positive feedback that she gives to her students. Okay, we now come to specific observations. What are some of the specific observations that we noted? Okay, these are the four aspects that we noted in her in the specific observations. I'll first discuss getting students to question. All right, what does this mean? Basically, what we have observed of the teacher when she actually goes through the text is her frequent attempts at always asking herself questions as she processes the text. So in so doing, right, she's actually modeling her thought processes and scaffold the students into developing metacognitive strategies. Okay, so this actually aligns very much with the OG principles of being cognitive, of the cognitive approach. Okay. All right. Now, how does she actually scaffold the student into developing the habit of asking themselves questions? So one example, okay, probably in lesson 1, I'll just share with you how the students were like and how the teacher actually provides the students with strategies to enable them to develop the habit of asking questions. Maybe we can just...
You're not writing anything. You understand how it's supposed to be comprehension. You should know. You're supposed to be underlining, making links, so that later on when you do questions, you won't be confused, okay?
All right. Take notice of the red words, underlining, making links. Okay, so she is constantly using these words as verbal cues for students to actually also pick up the habit of asking questions. So these are actually guiding them what to do when they actually encounter an unfamiliar word, or maybe they don't know how, they are not sure what to do when given a text. All right. So but in lesson 4,
you have to number the paragraphs, and then when you read the passage and you come across a difficult word, what do you rely on?
okay, if you notice back in lesson 1, there seemed to be a lack of response from the student. The student was very quiet when she was giving the verbal cues. So this actually suggests that the students were actually very unsure what to do, right, in the beginning. But in lesson 4, they were able to pick up the teacher's verbal cue in the red word, okay, and is able to use that cue to actually remind himself of what he needs to do in order to process a text. All right. Apart from questioning technique, okay, apart from getting into the habit of asking questions, as they read, the teacher also guides the students into how they could actually find out, guess the meaning of unfamiliar words through the use of contextual clues. Okay, so what are the types of contextual clues that she actually gives the students? First is by tapping on their background knowledge. And second, by directing them to other sections of text before or after the unfamiliar word in order to provide them with clues and to enable them to arrive at certain predictions. Okay. The other aspect of her teaching practice is from lesson 1 all the way to lesson 4, there was a very frequent use of two words: underline, highlight, underline, highlight. So she was very consistent with the use of these words, and these actually serve as verbal prompts for students to take note of important keywords. And this is actually very, very important in helping them process questions and what the question needs. All right, maybe we can just...
And then after that, when you come to the questions, what do? Highlight the keywords and go back to the text, and from there on you can find the answer, okay?
So the two words actually direct the students to keywords in the question. Okay, so this is more of processing question needs, all right? Okay, the last aspect of the specific observation that we noted was the habit of getting the students to number paragraphs even before reading a text. Why is this important? Because in the English exam paper, only line numbers are provided on the right-hand side. Paragraph numbers are not provided, but there are questions in the paper which direct students to specific paragraphs. They may even refer to the wrong sections of the text. She shows the importance of numbering paragraphs by instructing and demonstrating the act of numbering paragraphs in the beginning. And then slowly after that, whenever the students forget, she will constantly remind them until they develop this habit and become more independent. Okay? Okay, just to show you the importance of why they need to pay special attention to paragraph numbers, maybe if you can play lesson 1.
Middle of is not in that paragraph, right? You're supposed to look at which paragraph? It's us. Paragraph 3.
Okay, as you can see here in lesson 1, the students seem to lack awareness and probably did not pay attention to paragraph numbers. So as a result, she needed more guidance and needed more time to process the question needs. But in lesson 4,
now, question number 2, based on paragraph 5, skip 2 things Claire had to do before. Paragraph 5, good.
okay, as you can hear, okay, it's the student was now more automatic. So he was actually able to remind himself that he needed to pay special attention to paragraph number, and because of that, he was able to search the relevant sections of the text and find the correct answers. Right? Okay, these are samples of our students' work. The picture on the left-hand side, all right, is actually the students' work at the beginning. Okay, in lesson 1, you can see it's relatively clean, empty, only paragraph numbers. But if you can see on the right-hand side is actually a picture of the students' work in lesson 4. So you can see more evidence of the students attempting to annotate, to process the text, using symbols, underlinings, arrows, even using different colored highlights to represent different things. All right, so this is evidence. This suggests that the students are actually applying the strategies that the teacher has taught him, and because of the practice, the teaching practice of the teacher, he's actually able to attempt processing the text more independently. Okay, I'll now hand over back to Edmen.
Okay, so just 2 more minutes. So we actually took quite a bit of time to analyze the transcripts that we got, and we noticed something that we found very amusing and exciting, that a lot of our observations that we noticed were actually very in line with the OG principles. Okay, so for example, the rim air approach is very similar to the systematic, structured, sequential, and cumulative OG approach. And VAKT, very multi-sensory, there's emotionally sound, and a lot of the things that the teacher are doing in the specific observations are also in line with the OG principles, like the labeling of the paragraphs are actually it's a very explicit and direct kind of instruction. All right, so this is something that we did not realize, but we found after the study. Okay, so yes. So with the qualitative and quantitative results with the pre and post test, we found that the curriculum is successful because of the increase of test scores. With the classroom observations, we found that the teacher was consistently scaffolding the students into establishing metacognitive strategies. So remember the word consistency when I mentioned in the lit review. So Siti also mentioned consistency a lot of times, and you can see from the teacher over the lessons, a lot of consistency is happening. So consistency is the key to improving, and also how the practices of the teacher match the OG principles very closely. So we designed the curriculum in a very OG-based manner, but we did not think about how important it is for the classroom practices, the teachers' habits to be very OG-based as well. So that is something that we found out after the study. Okay, so with that, there are implications, which is to which is the possibility of actually implementing OG into various kinds of lessons, depending on the various pedagogical needs and practices of different kinds of students. All right, and of course, the importance of consistency in the classroom. All right, so there are limitations to our study, which is our qualitative aspect is only for with regards to one teacher. So we would like to actually further our study with more teachers to see if it's similar. And of course, there are also very limited topics covered because of time, right? So we would like to expand our study by expanding the curriculum or using more technology in our program. Right, thank you very much. This is our contact. Actually, we have a more detailed version of our study in the journal that you have in your booklet if you would like to know more about it. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much to Edmen and Siti for that wonderful presentation. I would like now to call out the Chief Financial Officer of DAS, Ms. Chai Su Chow, and to give tokens of appreciation to Edmen and Siti. Thank you so much. Siti, come.